Modern farming depends on satellite imagery, GPS-guided tractors, and computer-modeled water delivery. 5,000 years ago, a civilization in southern Iraq was feeding over 20 cities without a single one of those things. 15 irrigation secrets that kept Sumerian crops growing when everything else failed. If ancient food wisdom fascinates you, consider subscribing so you never miss a video like this. Number 15. The Eridu Canal Network. In March of 2025, researchers published findings in the journal Antiquity that rewrote what archaeologists thought they understood about ancient irrigation. Led by geoarchaeologist Jafar Jothari of Durham University, the team used satellite imagery, drone photography, and field surveys to map more than 200 primary canals and over 4,000 smaller branch canals near the ancient city of Eridu, considered the world's oldest city. The network connected to more than 700 individual farms, each ranging from 500 to 20,000 square meters, and predated the first millennium BCE. What makes the discovery striking is how well preserved it is. When the Euphrates shifted course in the early first millennium BCE, the Eridu region dried out and was abandoned, freezing its entire agricultural landscape in place. Archaeologists found not just the canals but the farms between them, still visible from satellite and drone, a complete picture of ancient water management, untouched for thousands of years, finally decoded. Number 14. The Shaduf Water Lifter. At the height of Sumerian agricultural ingenuity, the most important water lifting device in the ancient world was also its simplest. The Shaduf, a long wooden pole balanced on a vertical support frame with a bucket on one end and a stone counterweight on the other, has existed in Mesopotamia since approximately 3000 BCE. By pulling the bucket end down into a canal or river, then using the counterweight to raise it back up, a single farmer could lift substantial volumes of water from lower-lying canals to higher fields with minimal effort. The Shaduf's genius was accessibility. No metalwork, no complex engineering, no specialized knowledge, just a pivot, a pole, and a stone. It expanded irrigable land beyond the flat riverbanks to elevated fields that gravity-fed canals could not reach. Its design was so effective that it remained in continuous use for thousands of years and can still be found in parts of the rural world today. Number 13. Gravity-fed multi-level canal networks. 4 levels of water management, precisely documented in clay. The city-state of Lagash in southern Mesopotamia maintained a 4-level irrigation hierarchy, water flowing from the river into primary canals, regulated through flow controls, branching into secondary canals, then distributed through field-level channels to individual plots. This 4-level system is documented in cuneiform administrative archives from approximately 2400 BCE. What made the design brilliantly efficient was its power source. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers sat higher than the surrounding plains. Their own silt deposits had raised them over millennia, so gravity alone moved water through the entire system without mechanical pumping. The canals themselves could be up to 16 meters wide. From river to field, water flowed downhill. All a farmer had to do was manage the gates. Number 12. Artificial levee construction. In the flat marshlands of southern Mesopotamia, where flooding came without warning and drought followed just as fast, the Sumerians transformed nature's own defenses into engineered tools. Natural river levees, formed by silt deposits alongside river channels, were wide enough in the Sumerian period to commonly exceed 1 kilometer across. The levee crest could rise up to 10 meters above the surrounding plains. River levels during peak flooding varied between 4 and 6 meters of rise. The Sumerians built upon these natural formations, excavating soil and debris to heighten and reinforce them. They also channeled the avulsions, the natural course-shifting events where a flooding river breaks its own bank and carves a new path into planned canal routes. The world's first artificial flood barriers did not look like the concrete walls of a modern dam. They looked like carefully shaped earth, built by thousands of hands over many generations. Number 11. Reservoirs and water storage basins. Storage. That was the answer. Not just delivery. Sumerians constructed artificial reservoirs to collect excess river water during the flood season and hold it for release during dry periods. Cuneiform records from the city-state of Lagash document storage installations as part of the 4-level irrigation network. Diversion dams built on higher ground fed water into these reservoirs, which then supplied the canal networks during droughts. This is the concept modern water managers call strategic buffer capacity. The Sumerians did not call it that. They called it survival. A region where the rivers could flood catastrophically in spring and bake bone dry by summer needed a place to store the overflow. The reservoir was that place, and without it, the entire irrigation network was vulnerable to the exact seasonal extremes it was built to overcome. Drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. And while you are there, tell us, did you ever learn anything about ancient civilizations in school that you later found out was completely wrong? We love hearing those stories. Number 10. The seed plow. Around 2300 BCE, a Sumerian engineer solved one of farming's oldest inefficiencies with a single addition to a tool that already existed. The original plow broke soil. The new seed plow broke soil and planted at the same time. A hollow funnel, attached to the frame of the standard ard plow, fed seeds through a tube directly into the freshly opened furrow as the oxen pulled it forward. Before this innovation, seeds were sown by hand broadcasting, scattered across the surface, and left to germinate wherever they landed. The seed plow changed that entirely. Seeds entered the ground at a consistent depth, in straight rows, covered and protected by the turned soil immediately behind the plow blade. Germination rates improved. Crop density improved. The labor of two separate tasks was collapsed into one continuous pass. It predated the European seed drill by roughly 3,800 years. Number 9. Sluice gates and flow regulators. Reeds. Clay. Carefully placed. That is what Sumerian sluice gates were made from in their earliest form, and they controlled the flow of water across one of the most sophisticated irrigation networks the ancient world ever produced. Flow regulators were erected at key points between specially reinforced levee walls, managing the direction, rate, and volume of water entering canals and fields. Sciencing's detailed documentation of ancient Sumerian levee engineering confirms that these gates regulated entire canal networks, canals that could reach 16 meters in width. For field irrigation, the method was precise if labor-intensive. A farmer breached the canal wall by hand in the right spot, allowed the calculated volume of water to flood the field, then resealed the wall with mud. The Sumerian Farmer's Almanac recorded the exact recommended watering sequences for barley, and noted that a fourth optional watering generally produced an extra 10% in yield. They were not guessing. They had tested it. Number 8. The ard plow, drawn by oxen. 3,000 years before the birth of Christ, Sumerian farmers in southern Iraq were yoking oxen to a wooden frame with a pointed blade and plowing fields at a scale no hand tool had ever made possible. The ard plow, documented in Mesopotamia from the 4th millennium BCE, was the first agricultural implement powered by animal traction. By 3000 BCE, the practice of yoking oxen had become standard and would spread across Asia, India, Egypt, and Europe over the following centuries. The Sumerian Farmer's Almanac specifies that 4 oxen, arrayed 2 by 2, pulled the ard for autumn field preparation. The plow reached 15 to 20 centimeters into the Mesopotamian soil, which was all that the thin, flat southern terrain required. What the ard gave the Sumerians was leverage, not just against the soil, but against the scale of food production needed to sustain 20 or more city-states. One farmer with 4 oxen could cultivate what 10 farmers with hand tools could not. Number 7. Crop rotation with legumes. The Sumerian Farmer's Almanac, the world's oldest agricultural manual dated to between 1700 and 1500 BCE, demonstrates that Mesopotamian farmers already understood the principle of leaving fields fallow and rotating different crops through the same soil. Their rotation strategy was precise. Cereal crops, primarily barley and wheat, were alternated with legumes, peas, lentils, chickpeas, which naturally fixed nitrogen back into the soil through their root systems. This prevented the nutrient depletion that monoculture farming inevitably creates. The Sumerians did not have a scientific name for nitrogen fixation, but they had generations of observation. Fields that had grown barley for 3 consecutive seasons and then were planted with lentils came back stronger for the next cereal crop. The pattern was real, its mechanism invisible to them, and yet they followed it and recorded it anyway. That is what the Farmer's Almanac represents: systematic empirical knowledge, inscribed in clay for the next generation. Number 6. Cuneiform record keeping for irrigation. The year was approximately 2042 BCE. In a provincial office of the Ur-3 state, a scribe pressed a reed stylus into a wet clay tablet, creating an administrative record of irrigation work performed on a canal system in southern Mesopotamia. That tablet now sits in the collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. It is one of thousands. The Spurlock Museum at the University of Illinois holds additional Sumerian tablets recording the cleaning of a canal bed and the digging of a field. The Institute for the Study of the Ancient World at New York University has analyzed cuneiform archives from the province of the Ur-3 state, 2112 to 2004 BCE, documenting water distribution schedules, flood control operations, canal labor teams, and the social hierarchy of water management. The Sumerians did not just build irrigation systems, they wrote them down. Number 5. Organized labor and legal canal maintenance. Before the irrigation system was built, it needed workers. After it was built, it needed more. Constant maintenance was not a choice in ancient Sumer, it was a legal obligation. Laws in Mesopotamia required farmers to maintain their canals and basins, and legally required every able-bodied member of the community to contribute labor during flood emergencies, arriving with hoes and shovels at the call of the state. Cuneiform records from the Ur-3 period document this as a formal labor tax. Teams were assigned by name to specific canals, their work hours tracked and recorded in administrative archives. Canals silted up from the same rivers that fed them. The Tigris and Euphrates carried enormous quantities of sediment and had to be dredged regularly, or the entire system would fail. One clogged canal could cut off water to an entire village. The administration knew this. The records show they took it seriously. We are almost at number 1. If ancient wisdom and practical history are topics you enjoy, drop a comment and tell us which of these 15 has surprised you most. Our community always makes for great reading. Number 4. Recognizing and responding to soil salinization. By 2400 BCE, Sumerian farmers had documented in clay what would take European agricultural science centuries to formally understand. Irrigation water, evaporating under the relentless Mesopotamian sun, left behind accumulating layers of salt. The soil became waterlogged in lower areas. The water table rose, and more salt moved to the surface. A Sumerian clay tablet from this period recorded the experience with 4 words: the earth turned white. Faced with declining yields and fields turning visibly barren, Sumerian farmers developed practical countermeasures, including soil leaching by controlled extra flooding to push salt deeper below the root zone, strict control of the volume of water delivered to each field, and rotating heavily salinized plots into fallow for multiple growing seasons. These were not guesses but field-tested responses to a documented crisis, written down and passed to the next generation. The shift from wheat to salt-tolerant barley as the primary crop, completed by approximately 1700 BCE, was itself one of the most pragmatic agricultural decisions in the ancient world. Number 3. Water rights laws, 2500 BCE. 2 Sumerian city-states, Umma and Lagash, are fighting a war. Not over gold, not over gods, over water. Umma, sitting upstream on the Euphrates, had interrupted the water supply to Lagash. The king of Lagash responded by digging new canals to divert water from the Tigris at the border between the 2 states, and then systematically cutting off Umma's supply in return. It sounds medieval. It happened 4,500 years ago, and it was among the first in a long series of Mesopotamian water conflicts that eventually led King Hammurabi of Babylon to formalize water law in his famous legal code, composed approximately 1750 BCE. That code included specific provisions governing canal maintenance, irrigation negligence, and water theft, codifying into formal law what Sumerian communities had managed by custom for centuries. The Sumerians did not just invent irrigation, they invented water politics. Number 2. The Sumerian Farmer's Almanac, a clay tablet, 3 inches by 4.5 inches, 3,500 years old. Found by archaeologists from the University of Chicago and the University of Pennsylvania at the ancient Sumerian site of Nippur in 1949, it is the oldest farmer's handbook in recorded human history. The Sumerian Farmer's Almanac, composed somewhere between 1700 and 1500 BCE, predates the next oldest known farming manual by approximately 1,000 years. Its 111 lines of text cover the entire agricultural year, from the flooding of fields in May and June through plowing, seeding, and the precise watering sequences for barley, noting that a fourth watering typically produced an extra 10% in yield, all the way through harvest and winnowing in the following April and May. The text opens with the line, "In days of yore a farmer instructed his son. What follows is everything they knew, everything they had tested, everything they had watched fail and learned to fix." Number 1. Barley, the crop that survived everything. Before the salinization began, wheat and barley grew side by side in equal measure across the fields of southern Mesopotamia. 100 years later, wheat had retreated significantly. By 1700 BCE, it was largely gone from the south. Barley remained. The Sumerians had not predicted soil salinization. They had watched it happen over generations, adapted to it, selected the crop that could survive it, and documented that selection in their clay tablets. Barley was salt-tolerant. Its growing cycle was short enough to outpace the worst of the summer heat. It could be dried, stored, traded, measured, and used as a medium of exchange. Sumerian workers received barley wages, and Sumerian merchants settled barley debts. It was the foundation of their bread and the raw material of their beer. The Sumerians did not engineer a perfect agricultural system. They observed, adapted, recorded, and survived. And at the center of that survival, almost every time, was a short, scrubby, salt-tolerant grain that the rest of the ancient world would eventually depend on too.